know you Darklings have heard Christian talk about Manscaped, but guess what? It's not just about razors and male grooming anymore. Allow me to introduce the new Scalp Buffer, a gender-neutral product for your cleansing routine, available at manscaped.com, where you can get 20% off plus free shipping with the code PRETTYDARK. My hair loves to hang on to product, which usually drives me crazy, but thankfully the Scalp Buffer's thick silicone bristles are 100% antibacterial, helping our scalp stay clean and refreshed by gently exfoliating dry skin and reducing product buildup. Plus, the separation and lather it creates enhances shampoo penetration, making your shampoo last longer, which means saving money for more important things like maybe your Halloween costume. It's designed to stimulate blood flow to your hair follicles, and come on, we all know increased blood flow means healthier hair. Personally, I have trouble remembering to use certain products, and I hate a complicated routine. Just your typical shampoo with the Scalp Buffer adds all of these benefits without compromising more time. Simply put, the Scalp Buffer is your favorite scalp's favorite product. Have I said the word scalp enough times yet? Give your hair care routine a serious yet simple upgrade. Grab the Scalp Buffer and get yourself 20% off plus free shipping with the code PRETTYDARK at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code PRETTYDARK at manscaped.com.
Hold the dark holiday in your palms. Bite it, swallow it, and survive. Come out the far black tunnel of Halloween and be glad, oh so glad you are alive.
You're listening to That's Pretty Dark,
The podcast where we talk about all of the entertainment that scared us as children
and still haunts us as adults. So grab your flashlight and join us as we take a frightfully nostalgic look over our shoulders
and under our beds
and in our closets.
and together we'll realize, whoa, that's pretty dark.
Pretty dark.
Hey, Buzz.
Buzz is here. Buzz heard me say that.
Oh, so he heard recording and then he just came running.
That's his cue. He knows his cue.
It's like you whistled for the gargoyles and there he is.
Hi, sweet boy.
Yowza.
You gonna tell them Happy Halloween?
Happy Halloween, Buzz.
He's headbutting me, but that doesn't exactly translate.
That's kind of the same. I'm trying something new. I'm trying to really fully embrace the season and absorb as much of it as possible. And I just made an Irish tea, a very strong Irish black tea with nutmeg, cinnamon, ground clove, and some allspice and some local
spices.
honey. Yeah, all the autumn spices wrapped up in my little pumpkin mug I've got. And anyway, so
sounds so good.
I'm going to give it a try.
Oh, this is live. Live reaction.
That's delightful.
I can't even describe his face.
It's so good.
It's delightful.
I didn't think it would be. I thought it would taste like shit.
I was really worried for a second.
No, it's good. It's good. I hope it doesn't give me the runs because we need to get through this recording.
That is important. Yeah.
It's just dumping all the stuff.
I did not know that the Halloween spices were prone to do that.
I don't think so. I don't think they are, but I just.
But you can never be too careful.
That's a factoid of history. It's a fun thing. You know how they say outer space smells like raspberries?
No.
Because yeah, they do. They say that because it's like a weird compound, something that they found in I don't know, the black matter.
I really want to believe
or
you.
Something. Look it up right now. Look it up. Space smells like raspberries, and mummies smell like cinnamon.
My Google, when I type in space smells, it says burnt steak, steak, burnt metal.
Yeah.
If I do space smells like all those same things. Raspberries. The very bottom.
There it is. Told you. So space smells like whatever you want to smell like.
Yes, the center of the Milky Way smells like raspberries due to the presence of ethyl formate. Well, raspberries are probably my favorite fruit. Certainly my favorite berry.
Well, there you go.
One more reason for me to like outer space.
Mine are boo berries. Get it? Get it. Anyway, so outer space, the Milky Way smells like raspberries, and mummies smell like cinnamon.
Did we talk about that before?
No, I don't know if we have. I don't think so. I just thought about it this week. I was like, oh, they did. They did import spices, and they did use spices in the whole.
That at least makes some sense.
And that is the last thing that's going to make sense here tonight. Welcome to That's Pretty Dark. My name is Christian Mott.
My name is Kaylin Andrews, because we're being formal with our full names today.
Got to. It's a big night. It's a very important evening. We are wrapping up our Halloween tree series. This is part 2. the climax of our 2024 Halloween spooky season. We've arrived. This is the moment.
It doesn't feel real.
This is the precipice.
It doesn't feel real at all.
We're all going to jump off together.
I've dissociated.
Yeah. It's going to be awesome.
No, we are here, though. We're here with you all. We're here together. Our third Pretty Dark October is about to be in the books.
Where we left our intrepid trick-or-treaters in the undiscovered country. They had just crawled out from the darkness of the mummy's tomb in ancient Egypt and begun their journey north to the British Isles. But in the book, there's a whole sequence here to emphasize the significance of the ghost costume, which is worn by a boy named George Smith. See, the boys all race to the top of a pyramid, where there's a vast crystal lens, a viewing glass which spun slowly in the wind on a golden tripod, a gigantic eye with which to bring far places near.
I'd like to bring far places near, too.
And the boys use this to look out across the Mediterranean at ancient Rome and ancient Greece, where they witness numerous old world customs of leaving out food and drink for wandering spirits.
Like cookies and milk for Santa Claus?
Sure, or like trick-or-treat old style, Moundshroud calls it. He also calls it the Feast of Pots, which I've now learned was part of a larger Athenian festival called Anthesteria, which was one of 4 annual festivals in honor of Dionysus. And the Feast of Pots resembled a festival of the dead because it welcomed spirits back to the city for the duration of the festival. People would leave out offerings of food and wine in terracotta pots so as not to be disturbed by the spirits. But they would also smear black tar on their doors and windows as a sort of protective seal against the ghosts.
Also sounding vaguely biblical.
It's almost like all these customs and traditions came from the same place.
It is almost
and they just
like
sort of
that.
Repurposed certain means of protection.
Based on the belief system.
And after seeing all these things, Moundshroud bursts into 1,000,000 autumn leaves and whisks the children away through the night sky, and far below the European landscape is dotted with thousands of bonfires, which he calls fires of fear, flames of celebration.
I did really like that.
And as the kids soar across Britain in the movie, they see folks dancing around fires and feasting in celebration of the New Year. So the kids are super confused about Halloween versus New Year's. But this, as we all know, from our, History of Halloween series that we did, that I'm going to reference 100 more times, and I apologize. This is the land of the Celts, whose autumn fire festival Samhain marked the death of one year and the birth of another. So it's their New Year's. And the fire festival depicted in the movie shows people drinking, dancing around fire, and hopping over broomsticks as a sort of festival game. I couldn't find anything to show a game of jumping over brooms other than wedding ceremonial traditions.
That's the
and
only
such.
thing that I knew of in my mind. I was hoping you could tell us more because they did talk about it as a broom festival.
I took this as more of the first reference to witches. Just the first sort of reference to this whole concept.
It could have been just another case of Ray Bradbury going,
I think it is.
Hey, here's a little seed to plant for another costume.
And the second reference to witches is that Tom thinks he sees Pip down below, but Ralph sees Pip up above, below and above. The phrase, as above, so below, is commonly associated with the occult, magic, and witchcraft.
Yeah.
Although on the surface it represents things like equality and harmony, concepts that have always frightened certain types of people.
Too true.
Well, Moundshroud and the kids follow Pip to Stonehenge, of all places. And I don't really know why, but probably just because it represents an ancient, unknown time for the British Isles. Old worlds.
I mean, when you think of history and you think the British Isles, you're going to
think of Stonehenge,
come
right?
to Stonehenge.
Plus, it gives Moundshroud a great opportunity to deliver some ominous dialogue.
You'll need courage tonight. It's the Dark Ages, and this is the longest, darkest night in all dark time.
The longest, darkest night in all dark time.
I love it so much. In the book, however, Moundshroud drops the boys in a vast field of wheat, otherwise known as the harvest field. Thus begins the most fantastical and sensational scene in the entire book. But it's also the grossest misrepresentation of Halloween history and Celtic mythology that we're going to discover. It falls in line with all the beliefs we debunked on the show 2 Halloweens ago. Not only does he completely subscribe to the false history that Samhain was the druid god of the dead, but this is also where he emphasizes the significance of the Grim Reaper costume, which is worn by a boy named Hackles Nibley. Hackles is a nickname.
Good old Hackles Nibley from my college days.
Oh, we all knew a Hackles Nibley, didn't we? So as a refresher, from 2 Samhains ago, Samhain was the name for the Celtic New Year fire festival. As we've said, it was not a name for a god or any supernatural entity at all. Not to mention that the concept of the Grim Reaper was invented as a personification of death during the Danse Macabre artistic movement born from the Black Plague over 1,000 years after the Catholic Church snuffed out the flame of the Celtic pagan mythology.
You tell him. Tell him.
Yeah.
Holler about it.
Thoughts and feelings about this.
I'm sure the Darklings do too.
I think that the movie seeks to correct this massive time gap somewhat, which is why he drops them in the Dark Ages versus, the days of the Celts, Druids, and ancient Rome. But here, in the book, in this time before time, there's Samhain, the Grim Reaper, with his giant scythe sweeping across the wheat field in a murderous fury.
Inaccurate? Yes. Spooky? Absolutely.
Sensational? Yeah. Cutting down grains for the harvest. Each head of wheat represents the spirit of someone who died during the year. And as each head is cut down, it transforms into an animal or an insect until the field is crawling with them. As Samhain bellows out into the night that this is their punishment for their many sins.
Ick. Don't like that.
Yeah, it's heavy. And get ready because you're about to read for all of us.
Okay.
All about it.
And the harvest wheat flailed up, spun round on the wind, shrieking its souls. All those who had died in the past 12 months rained to earth. And falling, touching, the heads of wheat were turned to asses, chickens, snakes, which scurried, cackled, brayed. Were turned to dogs and cats and cows that barked, cried, bawled. But all were miniature, all were tiny, small, no bigger than worms, no bigger than toes, no bigger than the sliced-off tip of a nose. By the hundreds and thousands, the wheat head snowed up in scatters and fell down as spiders which could not shout or beg or weep for mercy, but which, soundless, raced over the grass, poured over the boys. 100 centipedes tiptoed on Ralph's spine. 200 leeches clung to Hackles Nibley's scythe, until, with a nightmare gasp, he raved and shook them off. Everywhere fell black widows and tiny boa constrictors. The scythe flashed. The wind cut, fell in bright thunders. The wheat churned and gave up 1,000,000 heads. Heads fell. Sinners hit like rocks, and hitting were turned to frogs and toads and multitudes of scaly warts with legs and jellyfish which stank in the light. I said ick before, but I did not sufficiently ick enough.
I want to say doubly ick, indubitably ickiness.
That is a nibbly ick, if I've ever heard of one.
Ickles Nibley. Am I right, ladies?
Gross. I didn't even like it when they said it in the movie.
I know.
That those who had died during the year became animals, black as sin, but
right.
It wasn't done to that degree in the movie, and I can understand why.
Yeah, that'd been hard to do. Just condensing, simplifying. It makes sense. And the boys here all run for their lives as their costumes are nicked by the blade of the scythe trying to cut them down. And they spot Pip, of course, who has taken the form of a black dog. And just before he reaches them, he too is cut down by the Grim Reaper.
I hope it's shitty.
And off in the distance, druid priests worship Samhain around a massive bonfire and offer up animal sacrifices to take the place of these souls, the souls of these sinners. And it works. He leaves in peace.
Because that's what you always need is a blood sacrifice.
Screw Eyes knows all about that.
I started watching, it's this Peacock original show, Hysteria, with Julie Bowen, and I love Julie Bowen, so I was like, yeah, I'll sign on for that. She was in Totally Killer with Kiernan Shipka, which was also really good. Like just campy slasher, kind of modern slashers.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I need to.
And Hysteria promises to be similar. I only watched one episode, but the whole thing is the satanic panic.
Oh, okay.
These kids are like trying to drum up popularity for their metal band, and so they start talking and acting like they know anything about Satanism, and
Sure,
it
right.
gets them into
Like
a
you
lot
do.
of trouble. Yeah.
It's a scene. It's not real, guys. It's a scene.
Right.
It's edgy. It gives people an
and
edge.
That's
and
that's
an
what
approach
this
to
show
art.
encapsulates.
It's so
but
funny.
then they're kind
It's
of
so funny.
put face to face with, well, now do the things that you say you do,
Yeah.
which no one
Right.
was really doing. Not really.
Not really.
The
As
whole
we learn.
Satanic Panic can be traced back to one preacher man.
They weren't doing it in the Satanic Panic. They weren't doing it during the Salem witch trials. They weren't doing it in the European witch trials of the 15th century.
And yet we all know that you need a blood sacrifice.
You need a blood
Really,
sacrifice.
the prominence of blood sacrifice is more common in the Bible than in any circles of Satanism.
That's true. Or in like a real life sense, you need a scapegoat and someone to blame for when bad things happen.
Sure. Sure.
Usually as a result of the blood sacrifice. We all know this. Or as protection against the bad things.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of, do you want to do a blood sacrifice together and see like maybe like
Just
bring
see
some more
what happens.
success to the show? Like
You
we
know?
should do our magic ritual for the show. Get some more sponsors.
I think that we have both sacrificed enough blood between the two of us for this show
God, the
that
tears.
we don't need to kill anything.
Tears, the blood, the years we've sacrificed.
Mm-hmm.
So where was I? Yes. Then, in something of a time lapse, Mound Shroud swiftly shows how the Roman soldiers arrived to murder the Druids and their religion, and then how the Roman pagan religion was destroyed by the Roman Catholic religion,
Mm-hmm.
which again is everything we covered in our History of Halloween series in much greater detail.
I already need a refresher. I'm going to go back to it myself,
Hey.
just for kicks and giggles.
And this is why, in the movie, at Stonehenge, as Mound Shroud briefly explains that the dead were thought to return on Halloween night as beasts, the kids see Pip in the form of a black cat, which helps quickly smooth over this whole transition into the history of witches, because we don't have a Grim Reaper costume in this version, but we do have Jenny's witch. And Mound Shroud says of the black cat.
Black as bad luck, black as sin, black as night.
Need we remind all of you that black animals are precious and need love,
Wonderful. Beautiful.
including black cats.
Shout out to all my black cat friends.
Black cat friends. What does that sound like?
Are you trying to start another band?
I don't think it's a band. It's more like a group,
A club?
an association, if you will.
The Order of the Black Cat.
Friends of the black cat.
Friends of the Black Cat.
Yeah, I like this. Let's keep this
It's
in
an
mind.
animal shelter.
For black animals only? We take in black animals?
No, we don't discriminate. But we do take special interest in those misfit animals that society has discarded.
Misfit Animals. It's another great name
my
for a
God.
band.
Oh my God.
Sawin's Children. That's a great name for a metal band. All right. So,
I do like how they all still look like children, though. They all look like kids. You can still see their turtlenecks and their sneakers under their costumes.
oh yeah, that does shine through.
Mm-hmm.
So that we never forget
Mm-hmm.
that they're kids.
The humanity underneath it all.
And after they leave Stonehenge, we see a collection of people chopping down trees and working to make broomsticks in an operation that Ray Bradbury whimsically calls the Broomworks.
There was a hustle of brooms in the broomworks, an immense traffic jam of brooms for witches to perch upon. It was as if all Earth's forests gave up their branches in one boom and fling, and scouring autumn fields, cut clean and throttled tight, such cereal grains as made good sweepers, thrashers, and beaters.
And his narration here in the movie is nearly word for word from the book.
Hey, you know what that is? A broom festival.
Jenny whimsically calls this a broom festival, and they play it up like there were specific types of brooms made especially for witches to fly on.
Broomsticks for witches.
For you.
This is a holdover from the book as well.
What is this, Halloween Town?
The brooms here all come to life, and soon the kids are riding their own broomsticks through the sky. And this happens in the book as well. Thousands of brooms begin zipping through the sky, and Mound Shroud calls this the Gathering of the Brooms, the October Broom Festival, the annual migration.
It's a broom jubilee.
It's a broom jubilee! Wow, way to bring it back to the locals. The local jubilee here in the Mobile Bay.
Hey, there's all kinds of jubilees out there.
All manner of wooden sticks join the migration, the Jubilee, from clothesline poles to fence posts that rip themselves up from the earth to join. And this all feels like something out of Fantasia.
Very Fantasia. I thought the same thing.
So the kids each hop on and fly through the sky, where they follow Pipkin on his own broom until he is swallowed whole by a malevolent cloud.
I know how that feels.
But this is the part of the story that seems to be praised most by critics and audiences alike, because it presents a somewhat historically accurate perspective of witches, if you discount the whole flying on brooms thing.
They claimed they could do these things, but that was a means to protect their privacy.
There it is. And this all combats the childhood understanding that witches were evil, grotesque old women to be feared. Moundsrout expounds on this, listing hags, crones, conjure wives, magicians, black magics, demons, devils.
Because society is terrified of actualized older women.
Truly.
Terrified.
Independent.
Still is.
Don't need no man. Well, Moundsrout says, witches were just intelligent people who were unwilling to conform to the status quo or subscribe to cultures of willful ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
They liked to push the boundaries of science and superstition by practicing what they called magic. And these witches had to hide their beliefs and their interests and their own privacy because people actively sought them out and murdered them for it.
Or just murdered anyone that they didn't like.
Well, that's
witchcraft,
true.
as we discussed and have talked about, was just a blanket statement to say, this woman should die.
It was more of an excuse, yeah.
It was more of an excuse than anything else, but those who did practice any form were also marginalized.
And the book specifically names these murderers as Christians, which I appreciated very, very much.
It said the quiet thing out loud. This is also the moment when I realized why this particular movie never made it into my childhood tape player.
Yeah, okay.
Because it wasn't denouncing witchcraft.
It wasn't denouncing anything about any of this. I mean,
exactly.
Ghosts, Halloween, witches.
And it wasn't even talking about it in a kind of fantasy way that still wasn't allowed in my tape player, like Harry Potter. It was talking about it in a real world way.
Moundsrout also explains in both versions that the word witch comes from the word wits. And this does have some etymological truth.
I was very excited for you to tell us.
A possible Proto-Germanic word, witja, meaning wise or wisdom, could have influenced the Old English words Wicca or witchy or wiki, leading to the Middle English witcha, leading, to witch.
I like it. I'll take it.
I think it's cool. I think it makes a lot of sense. And it all comes from this word, wisdom, wise, logic.
People, especially women, accessing knowledge that society didn't want them to have or didn't want to listen to them about or what have you.
Hey, you woman, you know more than I do. Must be the work of the devil.
I'm gonna burn ya. I'm gonna burn ya or I'm gonna drown ya. And if you drown or you're burned, then you were innocent.
She's too smart. Can we set her on fire? She won't have sex with me. I think she deserves to die.
Nailed it.
And similar to Jenny in the movie, the boys see what appears to be numerous gatherings of witches, which makes sense considering it's, Samhain, so there are going to be lots of masses and such.
Mm-hmm.
They see witches jumping over fires, stirring cauldrons, and drawing symbols in farmyard dust. And they just can't believe that witches were ever real.
Mm-hmm.
To which Moundsrout says,
Real? Moundsrout, insulted, almost fell from his bramblecap broom. Ye little gods and fishes, lad, every town has its resident witch. Every town hides some old Greek pagan priest, some Roman worshipper of tiny gods who ran up the roads, hid in culverts, sank in caves to escape the Christians. In every tiny village, boy, every scrubby farm, the old religions hide out. So all the little lollygagging cults, all flavors and types, scramble to survive. See how they run, boys. And it was true. Fires burned all over Europe. At every crossroad and by every haystack, dark forms jumped in cats across flames. Cauldrons bubbled. Old hags cursed. Dogs frolicked. Red-hot coals. Wow.
It's just so beautiful the way the way he writes about this stuff is so nice.
Yet another reason this was not in my school library.
Nope. And there's more to come, because there's another whole pretty dark section here that describes the broomworks as something like a broom factory that, makes witches' brooms. And it's all very magical and wondrous sounding. But there's a song, one of many. There have been many songs we've skipped so far that I haven't really had time to get into.
Mm-hmm.
But this one accompanies this witchy operation that I would like for us to read in tandem.
Okay.
The lyrics are blended with prose, describing the scene taking place. So we will alternate.
Mm-hmm.
Which one do you want? The song or the narrative description of what's happening?
You know I have to have the song.
Okay, you don't have to sing, but you can if you want to. It's long, but it's fun.
All right. Darklings, are you buckled in? Are you feeling good? Do you have the Halloween spirit?
Are you strapped to your broom? Nice and tight?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay.
All right. Mound Shroud says, "But listen, there beyond the hill, that's where the brooms come from. That's where the witches go." The boys listened and heard.
The broomworks makes the broom that looms on sky and gloom and rising of the moon. That broom which groom to witch flies high on harvestings of storm-wind grass with shriek and sigh to motion it in ocean seas of cloud, now soft, now loud.
Below, at full tilt, a witch broom factory was filled with commotions, poles being cut, and bound with broom brushes which, no sooner tied, took off up chimneys in flights of spark. On rooftops, hags leapt on to ride the stars, or so it seemed, as the boys watched, and voices sang.
Did witches feel the night wind in their bed, and reel and dance with devils and the dead? No. But that's what they bragged and claimed and said, until whole continents, hellbent, named witches of the innocent, and did conspire to burn old women, babes, and virgins in a fire.
Mobs raved through villages and farms with torches, cursing. Bonfires flared from the English Channel to the Mediterranean shore.
Through all of Germany and France, 10,000 so-called evil witches hung to kick their final, antic dance. No village but what shared a dread uproar, as each side named the other for a devil's pig. Old Satan's sow, the demon's maddened boar. That's pretty dark.
Wild pigs, with witches glued to their backs, trotted roof tiles, flinting sparks, snorting steams.
All Europe was a cloud of witches' smoke, their judges often bound and burnt with them. For what? A joke. Until all men are spoiled with guilt, all sin, all lie. So what to do? Why, everyone must die.
Smoke churned the sky. At every crossroads, witches hung. Crows gathered in a feathered darkness. The boys hung from their brooms in the sky, eyes popped, mouths wide. "Anyone want to be a witch?" asked Mound Shroud at last.
Damn.
And they all vehemently say, no.
I did start
sound
rewatching
fun.
Fear Street. We've talked about Fear Street a couple times.
Oh, God, I love Fear Street.
Because it was a great watch when we watched it whenever it came out. And I did start rewatching it. And
It's a vibe.
I can feel that thread through there with the curse of the witch on the town and Shady Side.
This is the season of the witch. And that's all pretty dark,
Mm-hmm.
I have to say.
I agree.
But wait, Darklings, there's more. In the movie, chasing after Pip on his own broomstick is where Jenny gets to have her own bedside deathbed conversation. Her own broomside death broom conversation.
Broomside. Death
broomside.
broom.
Yeah, we did it again. She saves Pip from falling through the sky, and while holding onto his hand, she begins to cry.
Don't fall, Pip. What if I ever need you to talk me down out of an apple tree again, huh? Tighter, Pip, if I ever lost you.
And this is because she's afraid of heights,
Yeah.
which makes her riding a broomstick all the more ironic.
To have this happen
being a
in the
witch.
sky. Yeah. A little insensitive of you, Ray Bradbury.
Facing her fears,
Symbolic. I know.
and when Pip does inevitably let go of that broom, they all fly off to Notre Dame in Paris, where the cathedral is only partially complete.
Sanctuary!
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 Now, construction began in 1163 under King Louis VII, and it was mostly completed by 1345. So, it was already largely completed before the actual European witch trials began. But I suppose we're, zipping through time and space, so it doesn't really matter all that much, because this is a kid's movie.
I have a riddle for you, monster.
Can't you ask someone else?
No, it's your turn now. What's bigger and stronger than demons and witches? A place so big it holds back the night and nightmares. What's bigger than devils and ghosts?
Bigger? Cathedrals?
Well done, monster!
And here, maybe it could have redeemed itself and found its way onto my shelf and my VHS player somehow.
Almost.
Almost.
Close. but no cigarette. The unfinished portions of Notre Dame are momentarily, supernaturally completed, and we discover that Pip is stuck high up in the future belfry. But when these unfinished portions disappear again, so does Pip. And to reach him, the kids have to quite literally take leaps of faith and finish building the cathedral by walking along the unfinished sections of construction over the sky, trusting that the stones will assemble themselves beneath their feet.
So much like a video game.
Yes.
That's all I could think, was like, this is a scene from a video game.
And there's also a very telling moment where Malmshroud can't even stand in the shadow of the church.
Yeah.
Because he's not welcome there. Further proof that he is, in fact, something unholy.
I wrote down Malmshroud's hesitation to enter church. It's like Toby at Susie's baptism.
It really is. I was
From
like,
The
wait a
Office,
second.
where he like works, he's like, okay, me and the big guy, we got a lot to figure out. And then he like tries to walk in, and then he goes, nope, turns around, walks down the steps.
In the book, Malmshroud is much less like Toby. This is not the case. He is up there with the kids, pushing them along to show that they have nothing to fear. And here, there's a bronze bell in the sky that is using Pip as the clapper. So they have to build the cathedral to save him from getting his head cracked open, essentially.
It was weird.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie to you. The place was like building itself.
This one's strange. And there's another brief moment here where the kids ask Mr. Malmshroud to fly up and save Pip himself, because he can fly.
Logical.
And he says, no, that's not the ticket. You must save him. Always and forever. Again and again. This night. Until one grand salvation.
Charlie has to buy the ticket.
Yes, they have to save Pip.
Otherwise, the magic doesn't work.
And he knows there's going to be one grand salvation at the end. This is all just practice.
Mm-hmm.
But it's getting them used to the idea of doing things to save Pip intentionally. It's planting the seed that not only can Pip be saved, but they themselves
will be the ones to do it.
Yeah, they can be the ones to do it. Mm-hmm. They have the power to do this, no matter how dangerous or difficult or terrifying.
It's empowering, but it's also weird because there is so much of this, like, go through my tribulations and learn what you don't yet know to then save your friend.
Yeah.
Stands up to my video game commentary.
They ran on pure windy light, only to have bricks and stones and mortar shuffle like cards, deal themselves solid, and take form beneath their toes and heels.
And in both versions, once Notre Dame is built, Pip is gone again.
Notre Dame!
Wally, dressed as the monster, points out that the cathedral is still incomplete.
No, this can't be Notre Dame.
Why not?
Can't you see what's missing? Monster faces. You know, stone devils.
Marble demons!
Gargoyles!
And in the book, Wally is distinctly dressed as a gargoyle, not just a generic monster.
Mm-hmm.
But this all plays out the same in both versions because one of the main distinctions of French cathedrals in general is the use of gargoyles in the architecture.
Just ask Quasimodo.
And Notre Dame wasn't the first cathedral to include gargoyles, but it's certainly the most famous, not just because of its size and history, but also because of Quasimodo's creator, Victor Hugo, and his novel, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And we must all offer our sincerest gratitudes to Notre Dame and Victor Hugo, because Ray Bradbury himself said that one of the reasons he became a writer is because of the 1923 silent film adaptation of The Hunchback of Notre Dame,
Well, what do you
starring
know?
Lon Chaney as Quasimodo. And there are a number of references to this in the book. The kids joke that Wally looks more like Quasimodo than a gargoyle, and Malmshroud makes reference to a cathedral so tall and famous it has a hunchback in it. And of course, there's, mention of the white-hot boiling lead that Quasimodo pours through the gargoyles onto the mob of vagabonds. But before we decorate the cathedral, I think we ought to carve out a little time to learn about the history of gargoyles.
Please.
What say, Darklings?
Oh, I can hear them. They're cheering, shouting.
The gargoyles or the Darklings?
The Darklings. I hope to God the gargoyles don't talk.
Oh, just you wait. In architecture, gargoyles serve the practical purpose of diverting water, derived from the French word gargoyle. They're essentially gutters. The decorative statues that don't act as gutters and serve no practical purpose whatsoever are actually called grotesques.
Mm-hmm.
And these are oftentimes chimeras, which are hybrids of humans and animals and other mythical beasts.
All the old beasts from all the old tales.
And practical or not, there are a few possible real-life reasons why these statues are usually ugly or monstrous looking. To non-Catholics, it's possible that these were meant to resemble pagan gods and spiritual entities to aid in the conversion process. We know this was a tactic used by the early church in different ways, especially when it came to all the festivals that they turned into holy days, like Christmas, Easter, and Halloween.
They wanted it to look as much like the religions and traditions that people were leaving as possible, so it would be easy to transition.
Come on in. The water's fine, yet murky with shit. Yeah.
Gotta do something about
to
that.
Practice, gotta clean that up. To practicing Catholics, it's possible that these were meant to act as reminders of hell, a fear tactic to keep believers committed to living holy lives and remaining faithful to the church, the only structure in all the land that could keep them safe from darkness.
Sanctuary!
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 And lastly,
still makes me think of Pagemaster.
It's possible that these statues acted as ferocious guardians that would protect the cathedral from demons and devils who would take one look at all those frightening guards and flee in terror.
Ever wonder why we like dressing up as monsters, beasts, and ornery critters? Monsters remind us of all the dark nights and old fears and nightmares.
And Ray Bradbury uses these superstitions to build his own folklore. Moundshroud suggests they whistle for the gargoyles to come and finish decorating the cathedral. And the book says, they came running.
The unemployed of all midnight Europe shivered in their stone sleep and came awake. Which is to say that all the old beasts, all the old tales, all the old nightmares, all the old unused demons put by and witches left in the lurch, quaked at the call, reared at the whistle, trembled at the summons, and in dust devils of propulsion skimmed down the roads, flitted skies, buckshot through shaken trees, forded streams, swam rivers, pierced clouds, and arrived. Man, he's got a thing for excess.
Yes.
This Ray Bradbury.
Sure does.
Which is still to say that all the dead statues and idols and semigods and demigods of Europe lying like a dreadful of snow all about, abandoned in ruins, gave a blink and a start, and came as salamanders on the road, or bats in the skies, or dingoes in the brush. They flew, they galloped, they skittered. And obedient to summons, the mobs, the flocks, the prides, the crush, the collection, the raving flux of monsters, beasts, vices, rampant virtues gone sour, discarded saints, misguided prides, hollow pomps oozed, slid, succored, pelted, ran bold and right up the sides of Notre Dame. In a flood tide of nightmare, in a tidal wave of outcry and shamble, they inundated the cathedral to crust themselves on every pinion and upthrust stone. So here ran pigs, and there climbed Satan's goats, and yet another wall knew devils, which recarved themselves along the way, dropped horns and grew new ones, shaved beards to sprout tendril earthworm mustaches. Sometimes a swarm of only masks and faces scuttled up the walls and took the buttress heights, carried by an army of crayfish and wobbly, crotchety lobsters. Here came the heads of gorillas, full of sin and teeth. Ugh.
Right.
There came men's heads with sausages in their mouths. And why that, Ray? Beyond danced the mask of a fool, upheld by a spider that knew ballet.
It's a talented spider.
Now that Notre Dame was infested with various beasts, and spidering leers and gloms and masks, why here came dragons chasing children, and whales swallowing Jonahs, and chariots chock full of skull and bones. Acrobats and tumblers, yanked out of shape by demidemons, limped and fell in strange postures to freeze on the roof. All accompanied by pigs with harps and sows with piccolos and dogs playing bagpipes, so the music itself helped charm and pull new mobs of grotesques up the walls to be trapped and caught forever in sockets of stone. Here an ape plucked a lyre, there floundered a woman with a fish's tail. Now a sphinx flew out of the night and shed its wings and became a woman and lion, half and half, settled to snooze away the centuries in the shadow and sound of high bells. And the flocks of strange creatures turned about 3 times like evil dogs and lay down. All beasts took root, all grimaces froze to stone, all cries faded, The moon shadowed and lit the gargoyles of Notre Dame. Whoa. You're clapping, but I can't hear you.
It's a mouthful.
That was a whole lot, Mr. Bradbury.
Well, there are a lot of statues on this cathedral.
Wow.
It's huge.
Yeah, that really puts into
Huge.
perspective the size and stature of Notre Dame, I reckon.
I wonder if he went there and just like took note of everything he saw, because he just
Maybe.
seemed to list everything.
I think he also
possible.
just likes to list all the animals in the animal kingdom whenever he possibly can.
I bet he loved the story of the Ark. Noah's Ark. Just
There they
all the
were,
animals.
2 by 2. Giraffes
7 by
and
7 and
elephants
2
and
by 2.
lions and leopards and tigers and bears.
Oh my. And Ray Bradbury also used one of my very favorite bits of gargoyle folklore, gargoyle language.
Oh.
It was once believed that gargoyles could use wind and water to speak, which might have to do with the etymology of gargoya, sounding a heck of a lot like the English word gargle.
Gargle.
So,
It all connects.
the sound of gargling is gargoyle language. We just don't know
it
we're
makes too
speaking
much
it.
sense. It makes
Doesn't it?
far too much sense.
You're welcome.
Darklings, how do y'all feel? Are you okay with that? Because
You are welcome.
I'm feeling some type of way.
And it's with this language that Pip, now a stone gargoyle, is able to speak with the gang.
Jenny! Where are you, Pip?
Yeah, he's now fluent, but it looks like he's puking.
Sure.
And I had a really hard time getting past that when I was watching it.
In the book, Pip tells them that he's not dead yet, but he's in multiple places at once.
I relate, Pip.
Part of him is in a hospital back home, part of him is in the Egyptian tomb, part of him is in the grass in England, part is here in Notre Dame, and part is somewhere worse. But he doesn't know where. All he knows is that he is afraid.
I think I'm like that.
In the
I
movie,
think I'm like Pip.
this is where Wally gets to have his bedside deathbed conversation. His stone side.
Stone side
death
cathedral death gargle.
His death gargle.
His death gargle
That's good, yes.
happens right here.
It's a cousin to the death rattle.
I was just about to say
It's just
all that death rattle breathing.
the
I'm
death
seeing
gargle.
the Eras tour this weekend. I am up to date on all of my Taylor lyrics, maybe more now than ever. So the death rattle breathing in a tree, DYING. Except he's on a cathedral.
Yes.
Mhm.
Pip says he thinks he's dying, but Wally urges him to be strong.
Go now, Wally.
No, Pip, you can't. Wait, will ya? Remember that time? Those fireworks I stored in my bedroom? The ones that started that fire.
Sure smoked up your house.
And you took the blame for me. I never thanked you for that.
Give people their flowers while they're still here.
I like that.
Do
It's
it.
nice. Yeah, we said before that we would attend our own funeral if we could.
Absolutely. But I'm 100% of the belief that if you appreciate someone, care about someone, have unfinished business like that with someone, that you should just take care of it. Do it now. Say it now. Say it as often as you can. It does not cheapen it. I know what you're thinking. Okay, Darklings? If I may therapize you for a second. I know what you're thinking. You're like, that makes it cheap. If I say this to everyone, it doesn't mean anything. That's absolutely not true. You have a unique connection with everyone in your life.
Yeah.
And if they
Yeah.
matter to you, it's only going to deepen that connection by telling them how much.
You're right.
So
This
I
is
dare
true.
you at this Halloween altar call to do just that. And if it makes it weird, then they weren't your people anyway. Make it weird. I dare you. Try.
That's true. If they can't be awkward in the moment with you and appreciate that
Yeah.
emotion, that depth of feeling
I want to
in
be
your life.
around and with people that can do that shit.
It's like the Dead Man's Bones lyrics from Dead Hearts, their song. A page full of je t'aimes for you. I know I should have said it more.
Oh,
Well, in the book, a bolt of lightning strikes Pip's gargoyle, sending it crashing to the ground and crumbling into a spectral dust that drifts off over the Atlantic toward Mexico. In the movie, Wally's weight dislodges the statue,
because they have to make that joke.
and the kids all follow him by riding gargoyles that have been animated by lightning in the storm.
And they look exactly like the gargoyles from the Disney series.
From the cartoon. Absolutely, they did. And they ride these gargoyles all the way to Mexico, where all the locals are celebrating Dia de Muertos, known to us English speakers as Day of the Dead.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Hey Darklings, Kaylin here. We know our generation has a surplus of pretty darkness in common, and if there's one thing unpacking our upbringing has taught us, it's just how essential therapy is for shining a flashlight on the darkness in our own lives. I don't know where I'd be without mine. I believe every human can benefit from the perspective of a licensed therapist. Whether you're familiar with your own inner workings or you're just looking for a listening ear, you can give BetterHelp online therapy a try by going to betterhelp.com/prettydark and receive 10% off your first month. I get that online therapy can be tricky, but I've been seeing my therapist online since 2020, and I'm here to tell you that it's absolutely worth it. Getting started is always the hardest part, and BetterHelp makes that easy. You can begin right from your phone or computer in whatever way makes you most comfortable, via good old-fashioned phone calls, video chats, or even messaging, if that's more your style. We enjoy this frightful nostalgia and learning about how it all connects, but Darklings know we're also passionate about healing and growing from what we learn. If you dare to do the same, head to betterhelp.com/prettydark. There you can answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who has years of experience helping people like us. Plus, you can switch therapists at any time, so you're sure to find the right connection. Millennials are ditching the stigma and owning our mental health. And with BetterHelp, you can build a relationship with a professional all from the comfort of your own home, just how we like it. Visit betterhelp.com/prettydark or choose That's Pretty Dark podcast during sign up and enjoy 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/prettydark.
On the way to Mexico, in the book, Ray Bradbury makes the briefest of references to the significance of the beggar costume, which was worn by a boy named Fred Fryer.
Fryer? I just wanted to see what you would do.
I hardly even know the witch. This costume, the beggar, is one that we would probably call today a hobo or a bum.
An unhoused person, okay?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Still a person.
Is that the PC way to refer to homeless people?
They are still people, like the humanity. I don't know how I feel about policing language to the specificity of that, but I do think it's important to remember that they're people, and that's what that language is attempting to do. So
yes, well, off in the distance, Irish beggars go door to door, begging for food. And as we learned in part 2 of our History of Halloween series, souling was the annual tradition of the poor and less fortunate going door to door in wealthy neighborhoods throughout England during All Hallowtide in the 15th and 16th centuries, where they would offer prayers or hymns or recite poetry in exchange for food and drink.
We talked about that with our trick-or-treat history.
They especially would receive the soul cakes, which you and I also baked.
We made them 2 years ago.
And they were delicious. They were so good.
They were great.
This practice was eventually adopted in Ireland and Scotland, where it was called guising. And Ray Bradbury's reimagining of all this history merges this holiday custom of guising with the Irish potato famine.
Of course it does.
And as we learned...
Okay, Christian, sure.
And as we learned, the mass transatlantic immigration of 1 million Catholic Irish fleeing the famine during the mid-19th century is one of the main reasons why All Hallows became such a commonly observed holiday season in the U.S. Naturally, I wish Mr. Bradbury had spent any time at all exploring this concept in this story. But when Fred Fryer, begs, as the beggar, to go there, Mounshroud just says, no time. No time!
Strike that, reverse it.
Fred's just like, but...
That you are Fred and Fred is you. Fred Fryer.
Yes. Me and Fred.
Christian Mott.
That's me. Well, anyway, once the kids fly into Mexico on their gargoyles, not a sentence I ever thought I would say, they immediately take note of all the death imagery.
Everywhere.
Cookies that look like ghosts and skulls, men building coffins. There's a little toy funeral procession, which leads one of them to say,
Look at little funerals for sale. Are those real coffins?
And in the book, he describes the men, building coffins as the Death Watch Beetle coffin makers. The tap, 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 tap.
Tap, tap, tap. Ooh.
Tap, 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 tap.
Or it could be
Tap,
the
tap,
drums in a marching band. Where Gerard Way is leading the charge.
In their freaking black parade. That would make it more like a second line.
It would, I guess,
But that'd be awesome, though. I could still...
I love a second line.
Really appreciate that.
Dance in the graveyards, as Delta Ray would say.
And I do. And after Pip's passing spirit lights all the candles in the graveyards, Tom says.
Back home, we'd never think to go to a graveyard on Halloween, but this looks like fun.
What world
Why
is
would you
Tom
never
living
think
in?
that?
What the hell does that mean?
I was in a graveyard just the other day.
Me too.
To look for the comet.
Tom is not a very good skeleton. It says in the
No.
book it's his favorite holiday, but he's not very good at it in the movie. In the book, this is much more like we don't go to graveyards on Halloween. He's kind of talking about like his family.
I was going to say, maybe he's thinking he wishes that were their tradition.
That is exactly
that
what
makes
he
sense
said.
because I have wished that as well.
It's just sort of like a
The way he
very
says it.
quick, reimagined like approach to this in the movie. I don't know why I had to change that drastically. I think it's because we don't really see. I'm gonna get to it, but we don't really see any of these families gathering in graveyards necessarily in the movie.
Left that to Coco a decade or two later.
But now that we've finally arrived at Dia de Muertos, I think it would be really super cool to give a brief overview of the holiday, especially since we didn't get a chance to talk about it during our History of Halloween series.
I do love it. I've always loved it.
Me too. And Ray Bradbury would also love it if we did, I think, because it seemed to hold a special place in his heart.
He used it as the finale.
He actually dedicated the book to a woman he'd met while visiting Mexico for Dia de Muertos back in
Wow.
1945.
Whoa.
It says, "With love for Madame Mana Garot d'Ambassel, met 27 years ago in the graveyard at midnight on the island of Janitzio at Lake Pátzcuaro, Mexico, and remembered on each anniversary of the Day of the Dead."
Wow. Wonder what that night was like.
I bet they did spend a wondrous night together, though.
I'm sure they did. Talk about dancing in the graveyards.
So yeah, I think he had a thing for this holiday. Not to mention the October kite, known in the book as the autumn kite, was probably inspired by one Guatemalan Dia de Muertos tradition of flying giant kites, or barriletes gigantes, which are flown to guide the dead back for the festivities.
Like a flag.
Yeah.
Here we are. Your people are here.
And I recommend looking them up because they're really cool.
Yeah, that is
and
super
they're all
cool.
like designed especially for this purpose. And I think it's like families make them. It's really dope. It's really cool. And I'll be pulling more quotes from the same source we used for our Halloween series, Lisa Morton's book, Trick or Treat, A History of Halloween. Like the rest of her book, this chapter on Dia de Muertos does a great job of taking a broad look at how this holiday is celebrated across Mexico, Central America, and South America.
Because, I mean, the traditions they vary just as much as
They do.
Halloween traditions, geographically.
They do. They shift and change. And what I'm presenting tonight is a painfully oversimplified and distilled perspective.
As with most things that we have to condense for your listening pleasure.
And yet not as distilled as the Halloween tree, which is once again mushing together a lot of different elements, all these different cultures, into a fantasy story for children. But the main through line is that Dia de Muertos is a period covering All Saints and All Souls days that pays tribute to deceased loved ones. And just as Halloween is the result of Roman Catholics forcing their religion onto the Celts, Dia de Muertos is the result of Roman Catholics forcing their religion onto the Aztec, Mayan, and Mesoamerican peoples.
Yes.
After the arrival of Hernán Cortés and the Spanish conquistadors. And growing up, I always heard that Dia de Muertos is Mexican Halloween. This is not accurate. This is not the case.
No.
Especially since Halloween has begun to infiltrate parts of Mexico and many people are actively trying to stop it from spreading. They're pissed about it. It's like a government issue.
Because they're worried that Halloween will overtake Dia de los Muertos,
and wipe out their history and their culture. Right.
Yeah.
Freaking white people.
¿Por qué no los dos?
Bringing their bullshit. Yeah, I agree. I agree. But it's just so much more special. There's something to this that's so much
It is.
more
I agree.
deeply rooted. It's much more accurate to say that these are ancient traditions and festivals that the natives agreed to move to late October and early November to coincide with All Hallowtide, as little more than a religious compromise.
How gracious of them.
Not like they weren't forced to.
Not like they were coerced in any way.
This was one of the only compromises made other than the most important one, the tradition of human sacrifice.
Right.
And speaking of human sacrifice, that's the first thing we've got to understand about Dia de Muertos. These cultures had long-standing religious traditions of human sacrifice, so they've always been very comfortable with death as not only a fixture of life, but a necessity for it. Therefore, to quote Lisa Morton, death, skull, and skeleton iconography figured prominently in the art of both the Aztecs and the Mayans. Figurines, pottery, and sculpted reliefs all feature skull-faced gods and humans. And if Dia de Muertos makes you think of anything, it's probably all the skulls and skeletons everywhere. From sugar skulls to folk art, including toy coffins and skeleton figurines holding musical instruments, etc., etc.
Etc., etc.
Probably all the skulls and skeletons everywhere, etc., etc.
Some Latin that doesn't apply at all, etc., etc.
Well, the three most important aspects of this festival are the sugar skulls,
Yeah.
the ofrendas, and the cempasúchil flower, which are marigolds.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm saying cempasúchil correctly, but that's the best I can do.
I respect the attempt.
The Aztec believed that the marigold was a gift from their sun god, Tonatiuh, so they would always have something beautiful in gold like the sun to mark the resting places of their late loved ones. These usually cover graves or are used to mark pathways for wandering spirits, and they are especially used to decorate the ofrendas, which are the altars made in people's homes to remember and honor their deceased loved ones by burning incense, lighting candles, making dough figurines, and leaving out drinks and traditional foods or a favorite food of the deceased.
Mm-hmm.
And these customs being applied to an altar likely came from the Spanish Catholic influence, since ofrendas were originally used in parts of Spain on All Souls Day and Easter to help lost souls in purgatory.
So what's the timeline on this? Like, when were these traditions kind of cementing themselves?
About the 16th century, early 16th century.
Okay. Just trying to get it straight.
Hernan Cortez conquistadors. And I mean, it would have evolved over time.
Mm-hmm.
Once they started to sort of impose their religion on them, it wouldn't have been immediate. It would have taken probably a couple hundred years.
Many decades, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not certain on that.
Centuries.
I would imagine. At least a couple generations to sort of like introduce things and then like let it become a normal thing for their kids and then their kids fully embrace it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it took at least 100 years. I don't know. But the sugar skulls, or alfeñique calaveras, likely came from European customs as well. Except they were originally small animal figurines made out of sugar, which are still sold in Italy and Spain. But the earliest recording of these animal figures in colonial Mexico is 1763.
Wow.
But by 1841, the same practice had been applied to skulls for use during Dia de Muertos.
Okay.
I guess that took them 300 years to start applying that to their own thing.
Sugar skulls, as we know them, are a relatively historically recent addition to the holiday.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, the confectionery skulls, the edible skull, but
skulls and skeleton iconography.
Skulls and skeletons had been there for
right.
probably 1,000 years, if not more.
They just made them edible after all that time.
It's cute. But these skulls are either for simply eating and enjoying, or being placed on the ofrendas, or being left on a grave as an offering. Graveyard visits play a huge role in general, which is one of the main focuses in the book that we don't really see in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Some people opt for that versus the in-home altar. They leave flowers, food, drinks, or sweet treats such as the sugar skulls, and often the name of the deceased would be written on the skull, marking it as that spirit's skull. So when the kids arrive in Mexico on Dia de Muertos and Moundshroud hands them sugar skulls with their names on them, this has some pretty macabre undertones, as he says, "Hold the dark holiday in your palms. Bite it, swallow it, and survive.
Mm-hmm.
Come out the far black tunnel of Halloween and be glad, oh so glad, you are alive."
I wrote that down because I was like, whoa.
It's a great line. It's a great sentiment.
I feel it every day of mine. I can tell you that much.
Come out the far black tunnel.
I feel it every day of my life.
It's just so good. It's so good.
I always, when I think of sugar skulls, it's really a funny, like, personal anecdote. But in high school, I took French. And so when I got to college, the only Spanish that I knew was from, like, elementary school Spanish. And I had to take 2, like, sequential classes of language to get my degree. And so I decided to take Spanish. And I was super intimidated by it because it just doesn't come naturally to me, like learning languages. That's just not how the elasticity of my brain is. So I was very intimidated.
Well, gargoyle language came pretty naturally.
Well, hey, that's different.
To most of us, I think. Most of us with tongues and uvulas, I think.
Mm-hmm. But the reason that I made it through those college Spanish classes was my college Spanish professor, Senor Britt. She was amazing.
Yeah.
And it's really funny because she like still keeps in touch with a lot of her students, and she knew like friends of mine from like different years or different places. And she like connects all of the dots in her head and knows who. And she's really great. But she loved sugar skulls. That was like her thing.
Oh, nice.
Like she had sweaters with them on, and she like, that was just how she decorated her office. And so
I get it,
throughout the years of college, if I saw like a little sugar skull trinket somewhere, I would get it from Miss Britt. So I remember getting her like a little pin and just different things like that. And she has a whole office, or had. She's retired now.
Good for her.
I remember her like posting pictures of her office, and it was just like decked out. I mean, nothing but sugar skull everything.
That's so cool, though.
And I was like, that's
I
a
love
cool
that.
little legacy to have, you know, as a
It
Spanish
really is.
professor. She was amazing. She was like one of the best professors I had in college. But I always think of Senor Britt when I think of the sugar skull.
But this whole thing is interesting to me because, as Lisa Morton puts it, the whole mood of Dia de Muertos is that death is accepted and mocked, not feared.
Yes.
So I take this moment, as morbidly dark humor on the part of both Moundshroud and Ray Bradbury, that Moundshroud, as the sugar skull vendor, essentially tricks them into eating the symbols of their own death and mortality.
It's coming for you whether you like it or not.
But that's the whole point, really. Memento mori. Eat the skull and accept that one day you will die.
Yep.
But since the skull is made of candy and you're eating it, it's like you're mocking death in a way. Like it says in the book, did you ever dream that death could be whittled down so very small?
I like that. I want it to be. I've always been kind of envious of cultures that have a much healthier relationship with death than we do in modern America, because our relationship with death is terrible in modern America. And obviously,
You're so terrified
it's
of it.
not a fun thing. And obviously, the grief. And part of the reason that we don't cope with it well in modern America is because we've never been taught how to grieve as a society.
No.
We don't know what we're doing. And we don't have any exposure to that oftentimes until we're in the position to grieve someone that's really, really important to us in our lives. And then the scar that leaves, you know, follows itself into the next time you're grieving something or someone. We have no cultural knowledge around it. We have no cultural acceptance of it. And we have no shared cultural spaces to unpack it other than churches who are telling you various different things about the deceased. And it can be really difficult if you're in a space like that and then someone that you love passes that wasn't in a space like that. Like that was something that I wrestled with a lot when I was younger. How am I supposed to celebrate their life if they're in hell? Like, really, really awful, difficult things that
that's tough.
You have to kind of confront as a young evangelical person. But
he's in a better place. He murdered so many witches. Did the Lord's work. Fred Fryer.
I don't know. I'm just lamenting the fact that
no, it's a real thing.
Death is difficult for us, and it's always going to be difficult, but it doesn't have to be as difficult as it is.
We're just taught that it's icky, and it's like this horrible thing to dread and fear and never think about, not once.
No, you can't think about it. Well, you can think about it because you need to be thinking about eternal life. But
I get, yeah, from like a church perspective, I'm thinking more of like, you got to get back to the office.
Right. Oh, yeah, that too. That too. Yeah, you can't think about it until it happens to a loved one or to you.
Right.
I think about it often. So you would think that I
yes
would have a much better way of dealing with it and looking at it. I feel like I may, better than some, but not as good as most, and certainly not as good as anyone who was able to authentically celebrate something like Dia de los Muertos and like embrace and appreciate your loved ones.
Truly.
In that way.
I also grapple with my own mortality. It's difficult.
I do it constantly.
I have many a long, dark night.
As long as y'all remember me, I think I'll be okay. Just like he says in Coco.
As long as somebody keeps paying for our hosting, we'll have a podcast.
We'll be up here on the internet.
Be out there forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
But speaking of dark humor.
Miss y'all.
To pivot. Remember when they came across the newspaper with Pip's picture on the front?
Hey, look! What's this?
Whoa, the newspapers are full of bones!
Mexican Halloween.
This is a reference to another custom called calaveras, which is the Spanish word for skull, yes, but in this context is the name for a form of satirical short poem focusing on death and the macabre. Calaveras originated in newspapers in the 19th century and first took the form of fake poetic obituaries of then living public figures.
Wow.
So-
Fake news, but funny.
Fake news, but like everyone knows, except for these kids because they can't speak Spanish. So they don't know that what they're looking at is a satirical fake obituary for Pip. And that's pretty dark, Ray Bradbury.
That's really dark, Ray
But
Bradbury.
I like it a lot. And it's so subtle. He doesn't even like explain it. It's just, here's Pip in the newspaper.
Very glad you told us about that. That feels like, again, like something you would do in a story.
Thank you. Thank you. And there's just so much more to this entire sequence in the book. The kids spend time in a graveyard watching people leave offerings and flowers and photos of their loved ones. And just when the boys are about to eat their own candy skulls, a group of Mexican boys that all look just like them and have very similar names come and steal away the skulls.
The doppelgangers.
And then run away to set off fireworks in the plaza.
The doppelgang.
The doppelgang. That's dope.
Like that?
We got to use that for
You
something.
like that?
Yeah, that's really good. It's like the gangrene gang. And this theft comes from a traditional game called Taruskin, which very much resembles an Easter egg hunt, except with actual food. And the practice of stealing sugar skulls from other people is like fair game across the city. It's all part of the fun.
That is fun.
So this group of 8 boys that all look just like them, it's so interesting. And at first I wasn't sure how to feel about it, but then it sort of clicked that he's basically saying there are boys across the world who are all just like you.
Yes,
And
it's
many different
reductive, but
cultures.
but you are the children of the world.
It's like making it relatable. Like, see how different it is, but it's not. We're all the same.
It's like did you ever have those Children Just Like Me books?
No.
It was like UNICEF or something that like published or sponsored this book series. I think we got them at like the library or something.
Huh.
It was pages and pages of like profiles on kids from different countries and different cultures. And so you'd read about they eat this for lunch and like they do this. And the whole point was like children just like me. Like there are kids all over the world that are exactly like I am,
Right.
just in their culture and their home. And it was really like I was obsessed with these books when I was a kid.
That's cool.
Please, Darklings, if you know these books, tell me I'm not alone because holy cow, that came from the recesses of my memory into this moment with us.
Huh.
But it reminds me of that. It was like looking in a mirror.
It is very similar. It's the same
You're
sentiment.
never really alone. The sentiment is you're never really alone.
And in the same vein of the newspapers, the calaveras, I was also pleased to discover something else. We've covered the histories of souling, guising, mumming, and trick-or-treating. But what I didn't know is that there is a Dia de Muertos version of the same thing called sculling,
Sculling.
where the kids go house to house on All Souls Day and ask for un pequeño calavera,
A little skull.
a little skull. And I love that. I think that's just so fun.
That is fun.
It's the most badass. I mean, souling sounds great. Guising is dope.
Souling, guising,
Mumming,
sculling.
sculling.
And we have trick or treat.
Trick or treat. Smell my feet.
Give me something good to eat.
But the coolest thing about this is that all this in the story takes place in a real location in Mexico, the same one mentioned in the dedication, the island of Janitzio in the middle of Lake Pátzcuaro. This island and this whole area around Lake Pátzcuaro is also one of the largest tourist attractions in all of Mexico for Dia de Muertos, which is probably why he chose to visit there back in 45. Now, both versions conclude the segment the same way, with the piñatas. But before we get there, the book delights in the macabre for just a few moments longer.
I'd expect no less. The boys looked. On top of a mound of white sugar skulls was one with the name Pipkin on it. Pipkin's sweet skull, but nowhere in all the explosions and dancing bones and flying skulls was there so much as one dust speck or whimper or shadow of Pip. They had grown so accustomed to Pip's leaping up in fantastic surprises on the sides of the Notre Dame or weighted down in gold sarcophagi that they had expected him, like a jack-in-the-box, to pop up from a mound of sugar skulls or flap sheets in their faces, cry dirges. But no. Suddenly, no Pip. No Pip at all. And maybe no Pip ever again. The boys shivered. Cold wind blew fog up from the lake.
And then, a solemn man in mourning comes around a corner, carrying a small white coffin. And Ray Bradbury must have seen something like this while in Mexico, because this is the second time he used a child's coffin in a story about Dia de Muertos.
And the second time we've had to say the words child's coffin. Well, that's pretty dark. This year.
Just keep saying it.
The children. The coffin children.
Ooh. It's a great name for a story in a way. Coffin children. And now the boys start getting serious with Moundshroud. They know it's almost midnight and time is running out, so they begin to plead with him. How do we save Pip? What can we do? They beg him for an answer. And this is when Moundshroud points them toward a cluster of piñatas in a tree. He instructs them to find their own costume and break it open. And as they do, they're each consumed by tiny figurines of their own costumes, which carry them off in a wave to the final location.
Gulliver's Travels?
The entrance to the catacombs. But I like how this part is done in the movie better, because we still see the piñatas, but Moundshroud himself turns into a cauldron of bats, which carry the kids to the catacombs. You know, more evidence that he just might be a vampire.
Very, very vampiric.
But Book Tom takes a moment to embody one of the whole points of the Halloween tree.
Oh, strange, funny, strange, whispered Tom. Up in Illinois, we've forgotten what it's all about. I mean, the dead up in our town. Tonight. Heck, they're forgotten. Nobody remembers. Nobody cares. Nobody goes to sit and talk to them. Boy, that's lonely. That's really sad. But here, why shucks. It's both happy and sad. It's all firecrackers and skeleton toys down here in the plaza, and up in that graveyard now are all the Mexican dead folks with the families visiting, and flowers and candles and singing and candy. I mean, it's almost like Thanksgiving, huh? Everyone sat down to dinner, but only half the people able to eat. That's no mind. They're there. It's like holding hands at a seance with your friends, but some of the friends gone. You said it, Tom. That's exactly what I was trying to say earlier about American culture not giving.
That's true.
They do for a little while, and the people that lose people do for longer. But as a culture, gotta get to the office.
And this sentiment, this realization, will very much come in handy in the catacombs. The location of locations, the horror of horrors.
The horror.
And the worst part is, it's a real place that you can still go visit today. And I very much want to.
I assumed you would. They found themselves in the middle of an abandoned graveyard with no people, no lights, only stones like immense wedding cakes, frosted with old moonlight. And as they watched, Moundshroud bent. He reached for an iron rung in the earth. He pulled. With a shriek of hinges, a trap door in the earth gaped wide. The boys came to stand at the edge of the big hole. Catacombs, Moundshroud pointed. Stairs led down into a dry dust earth. The boys swallowed hard.
They ask if Pip is down there. Moundshroud says, "Go bring him up, boys." When they ask if Pip is alone down there, he says, "No. There are things with him." Things.
No, thank you. How about you help us out, Moundshroud? You keep saying you can't, but I believe you can, if you want to.
This is his way of doing it.
Teaching them, I know.
The others are all too scared to go, but Tom quickly leads the way down, and they follow. This is a very eerie place Ray Bradbury visited while he was in Mexico, resulting in an experience that haunted him for the rest of his life. And I say that because he wrote about it multiple times. I haven't read all of his works, but I know of at least 2 occasions, The Halloween Tree and another psychologically horrifying short story called The Next in Line. There are a few things he experienced in Mexico that he used in both of these stories. The fear that a sugar skull might be poisoned, a funeral procession where a man is carrying a child's coffin, and the Mexican mummies. In the introduction to the 1999 reprint of October Country, he explains the inspiration for a few of the more famous stories. And here he says, "The Next in Line recites my terror at being trapped in Mexico, in a corridor of mummies I hope never to see again." And this corridor of mummies is none other than Museo de los Momias de Guanajuato, or the Museum of Mummies in Guanajuato, Mexico. The history of this museum is just as fascinating as it is nightmare-inducing. Irregardless, I need to visit. And as Moundshroud says, their families couldn't
pay the rent on their graves. That got me.
According to Atlas Obscura, the town of Guanajuato imposed a new tax in 1865, a local grave tax, that, if not paid, would result in your loved one or ancestor being dug up and evicted.
Mm.
This was done to make room for new bodies in the overcrowded cemetery.
God, it feels so cruel.
It does. Very much.
It feels so cruel, and it feels so capitalistic and greedy. But then again, like you said, it's overcrowded. Like,
where are they going to bury the bodies?
Where do you
put
them?
The bodies?
Oh my God!
When the ground holds no more bodies.
These are problems that no one wants to think of. Least of all, our sweet dear darklings trying to enjoy their Halloween.
And the crazy thing is, crazier than that, is that the specific conditions of the climate in the soil in Guanajuato preserves dead bodies.
Whoa.
So when they started digging people up, they found what could only be described as mummies.
Mm-hmm.
So they moved these mummies to an ossuary beneath the cemetery itself. And an ossuary is literally just extra storage for bones and bodies when burial space is scarce, or when there are a lot of deaths at once, etc.
I feel like I have heard that word in reference to like a plague or like something where there are a lot of casualties at one time.
It's death overflow, essentially. And by 1894, the ossuary at Guanajuato had rebranded itself as a museum and charged a fee to see the mummies.
Oh.
So, capitalistic venture? Yeah, check. The damnedest thing is that the tax wasn't revoked until 1958.
Wow.
So, when Ray Bradbury visited in 45, he wasn't looking at history. He was looking at reality. And the thought of dying and being stuck down there where people could pay money to come look at his corpse just for fun totally shook him.
It would shake me too.
I think he had a profound moment down there.
Like, these were people.
Yeah.
What dignity is in this?
I think it depressed him.
It would depress me. It does depress me.
He used the word lonely a lot when describing it. But if there's any truth to the character of Marie in the next in line, I think it's possible that he actually had a panic attack. He mentioned being trapped. There must have been a moment where he was stuck. And I think that's what just like set him off.
Or just the idea that he could be.
Perhaps, yes.
It's so interesting, the juxtaposition, because we're just talking about how nice it is that these are friends all gathered in seance and living and dead, communing together, and they're so close. Life and death and life, and hair between them. It's from Elizabethtown. But we were just talking about how nice that is. But in this same culture, there's this moment that feels way more cheap, way less connected, and way less dignified, because you're not communing with your loved ones, but instead you're almost a sideshow act in death.
It's like the opposite. It's two sides of the same coin in this history, this culture, right there. And he got to see both. Because
they're okay with being close to it, which means they're also okay with exploiting it.
That's how it goes sometimes, sometimes. Sometimes you just got to make money off your mummy, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes. When life hands you mummies,
you make a buck.
Well, this eventually became a well-known tourist attraction in the latter half of the 20th century. So they cleaned up, put the mummies in glass cases, there's a gift shop, everything.
Do they sell sugar skulls?
I bet they do, at least during Dia de Muertos, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
But when Bradbury went, it resembled little more than a catacombs, which is exactly how he describes it in his writings.
And exactly how it's visualized in the movie. Tom put his foot on the first step down. He sank into the earth. He took another step, and then suddenly, he was gone. The others followed. They went down the steps in single file, and with each step down, the dark got darker. And with each step down, the silence grew more silent. And with each step down, the night became deep as a well, and very black indeed. And with each step down, the shadows waited, and seemed to lean from walls. And with each step down, strange things seemed to smile at them from the long cave which waited below. With each step down, the town got further away, and the earth and all the nice people of the earth. Even the graveyard above seemed far away. They felt lonely. They felt so alone that they wanted to cry.
No.
I'm starting to feel like Theo in The Haunting of Hill House.
I actually just had that same thought.
That's what it's reminding me of. That monologue on the side of the road. I think about that at least once a week.
For me, it was even the graveyard above seemed far away. You're beneath the graveyard.
When the graveyard is above you.
Something about that really got to me.
For each step down was a billion miles lost from life and warm beds and good candlelight and mother's voices and father's pipe smoke and clearing his voice in the night, which made you feel good knowing he was there somewhere in the dark, alive and turning in his sleep and able to hit anything with his fist if it had to be hit. This is like a more violent take on the Mr. Rogers. Like when you're in bed at night, sometimes when you hear the voices of your loved ones, that's a good thing. It just means they're nearby. And sometimes you'll hear that when you go to bed. And,
and sometimes they punch.
Sometimes they punch the monsters and the intruders and anything that threatens your slumber. Each stepped down, and at last, at the bottom of the stairs, they peered into the long cave, the long hall. And all the people were there, and very quiet. They had been quiet for a long time. Some of them had been quiet for 30 years. Some had been silent for 40 years. Some had been completely mum for 70 years. A long line of them standing against the walls. 50 mummies standing against the right wall and 50 mummies standing against the left wall. And 4 mummies waiting at the far end in the dark. 104 dry as dust mummies, more alone than they, more lonely than they might ever feel in life. Abandoned here, left below, far from dog barks and fireflies and the sweet singing of men and guitars in the night. The boys looked and saw that some of the ancient people were dressed like farmers, and some like peasant maids, and some like businessmen in old dark suits, and one even like a bullfighter in his dusty suit of lights. But inside their suits, they were all thin bones and skin, and spiderweb, and dust that shook down through their ribs if you sneezed and trembled them. I feel like that sometimes.
Don't tremble me. I might lose my spider webs in my dust.
Don't tremble me.
The kids first hear and then see Pip hiding in the most distant, dark corner of the catacombs, crouched and crying, lost, lonely, and afraid. Unable to get up and leave because the mummies, he says, won't let him. And the mummies won't let them go to Pip either.
How are they keeping him there? How?
Because
the power of suggestion.
Definitely move in the dark. In this version, anyway. Maybe they did when Ray Bradbury was there too. Maybe he thought so. And this is where the metaphor of that dangerous, dark ravine in the woods comes full circle in the book.
Mm-hmm.
When Pip is too afraid to come back out, Tom thinks to himself, Pip, if you stay forever. And I know he says this aloud in the movie, but as I've lamented previously, the metaphor is lost.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where the kids learn the valuable lesson of, well, paying someone's rent, their debt. The movie is similar enough, but still different. Before they get to all the debt talk, Tom first must learn the significance of his skeleton costume.
Tell me, why do you wear bones, skeleton?
Because of my name.
Oh, have you learned nothing tonight, boy?
Because maybe if we face death eyeball to eyeball, it loses its power over us. It can't scare us.
Excellent, Tom.
Essentially, if you look death in the face and accept it for what it is,
it loses power over us.
So, facing death alone, he charges through the mummies, the nightmares, the mysteries, the dreadful ones, the dyers and the haunts, who all try to stop him, but can't. In reaching Pip at last, Tom finally gets his own bedside deathbed conversation.
Catacomb comeuppance.
Catacomb comeuppance. Is that not an album title for the Samhain's children?
No, it's what Bobby Boris Pickett wishes he had put on Monster Mash.
Comeuppance. Oh my god. Oh Lord.
Oh Bobby.
What that would be an all-out fisticuffs match between Dracula and Boris down there in the dark. One of them gets their comeuppance.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so his bone-side death bone conversation.
Bones.
That's what I wrote.
In the catacombs.
Ooh, bones in the catacombs. It's a good spoken word. This is good.
Yeah, I like it. I enjoy this. You guys sick of it? You gonna come to our slam poetry in the catacombs?
We gotta keep it light because this is so heavy. This is so dark.
I would do slam poetry in the catacombs. I would. That might be one thing I might do down there.
Slam poetry in the
That'd feel
catacombs.
good. And awful.
Oh, Pip, don't die. I'm sorry. So sorry.
What do you mean, Tom? You came through.
No. All of this tonight is my fault. I once wished for something to happen to you so I could be later for a change. But I never thought something like appendicitis.
Don't be silly, Tom. I'll let you leave anytime.
There's that like superstition, right? We've all thought we caused things that we had nothing to do with. But of course, Tom is going to internalize that guilt. We've talked about this on the show a couple times and things we've covered. Darklings, help us, please. Was it Final Wish? There's like an air of it in Labyrinth when, of course, she's wishing for something to happen to her brother.
Whereas like in Balto, when he wishes all those kids would die. Oh, wait. That didn't happen.
No, that didn't happen. Definitely not that. But I know that there's something close to this where we all think that we are more powerful than we are in those ways, and we all have a little bit of that superstition in us, which I know, the reason that I'm thinking of it is I think I remember having a conversation on the show where I was like, I would not even touch that in my mind.
Yeah.
As angry as I may have been at my sister as a kid, or like as angry as I've ever been at anybody, honestly. And I mean, I've been pretty angry at people.
Mm-hmm.
I won't even go there mentally to wish something bad on them, to wish ill.
Right.
Because there's some part of me that thinks it would be all my fault and I could never take it back.
Yeah.
So I get why this is Tom's immediate response. Like, because I have had a thought like, I wished that I didn't have to follow you, or like, I've had these thoughts, these jealous thoughts in my head. I've put you in this situation, you know?
You would blame yourself forever.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that way plenty of times.
I can't let things like that go.
Mm-mm.
I worry that everything is my fault.
Well, if you're anything like Tom, you'll be forgiven. Pip forgives him and promptly turns to dust. Ashes to ashes. Dust to dust.
This truly has been fun, hasn't it? And I know just where I'm going to hang this.
Now Moundshroud has retrieved Pipkin's pumpkin fire soul, revealing himself to be something of a true villain who has merely used the love and affections of these children to find Pip.
We could save Pipkin.
Children, it's business. With his illness, his rent came due, and there was no payment. He's mine now.
It's simple and plain.
But thanks to everything that they've learned on this journey thus far, that death isn't something to be feared, that they would do well to remember and honor those who have died, and that sometimes grave debts simply need to be paid. The kids all decide to do something that I can't think about without feeling a sickening twist in my stomach.
I felt sick watching this whole exchange.
When I was reading this again in preparation, my jaw just dropped. Because it'd been a few years since I'd read it, and I just completely forgot.
We weren't kidding, y'all. When we keep talking this up and we keep teasing you, like you guys say that you hate when we do, we weren't intentionally teasing you. This shit is really, really dark.
They each offer up 1 year from the end of their own lives in exchange for the safe return of Pip's soul.
It's yours if it would save Pip.
1 precious year from the far burned-out candle end of your life, eh? Think before you answer. You won't miss it now, but 60 years from tonight, 72 or 80, when I come for payment, you may regret it.
1 year from the far burned out candle end of your life.
The main difference in the book is that this whole thing is Moundshroud's idea. The boys are all too scared to face the mummies. Tom doesn't go to Pip. It is a vast dark ravine, right? So Moundshroud suggests that they strike a bargain with him and others unnamed. A Mr. D for Doom, a Mr. B for Bones. All they have to do is agree to the terms by eating a piece of the sugar skull with Pipkin's name on it. Well, as I've hinted at, I have thoughts on these 2 different versions of Moundshroud. Movie Moundshroud to me is a clear villain. He never saw this sweet twist of fate coming, but he greedily accepts it, collecting fragments of the souls of these 4 underage children in exchange for 1 complete soul.
I felt awful about it, watching it. I was like, this is, something about this is just fundamentally, like, predatory.
Skeezy.
Skeevy.
It
Don't like
skeeves me out.
Same.
The book is left much more up to interpretation. Most would probably agree with me that this was Moundshroud's intention all along, seeing as how it was his idea, and seeing as how he's quite literally the ghost of Halloween past. But that's the point of A Christmas Carol, isn't it? A moral, a lesson to be learned, and many lives changed because of it. But Halloween has a far darker and more unforgiving history than Christmas. Such would be the nature of a ghost of Halloween past, would it not?
I guess so.
My own pumpkin fire soul tells me that Moundshroud is this immortal being that believes childhood is sacrosanct. He's intimate with death on a regular basis, and he has absolutely no misconceptions that death isn't an inevitability for everyone, including himself. So for him to take the boys on this grand adventure to save their friend's life, and to show them a fun time and laugh and make jokes and sing songs and offer treats all in the morbid face of death itself, it's impressive, almost. He's being gentle with them. He's being sentimental about the loss of childhood, which is kind of Ray Bradbury's bread and butter, that nostalgia.
I guess they just wanted to amp up the villain for the movie.
You need an antagonist for a movie. So I think they kind of had to flip that, and make him worse than he was supposed to be. But I think Book Moundshroud spirited these boys away on this journey through history and folklore and tradition so that they'd have all the info they needed to make an informed decision about the profound sacrifice that must be made to save Pip's life, to be willing to choose love over fear. And this is kind of why we couldn't dig into this a year ago.
It is.
Because the reality of impending doom or death or the probability of it seemed way more likely and up close and personal.
It seemed too likely to even think about this or talk about it. Obviously, we would all do well to face death eyeball to eyeball. And as much as we say we do that and have done that, especially for people who are in a perpetual state of not really knowing where the chips are going to fall, you almost have to do it over and over again. It's not really this thing in reality that you do one time and then you're good from then on out. It's a daily or constant almost back and forth with yourself. And
you must save him always and forever, again and again, this night until one grand salvation.
Exactly. So that cycle of grief and that cycle of death almost is different and harder when it's repeated.
Sure.
But I have a deep, deep respect and camaraderie and kinship with people who are not really given a clear path and who are trying to live their life in between the death that they face.
In between the death. A great title for a memoirs.
In between death. Yeah, because it's like that. I mean, we have good days and we have bad days, and you never really know which one you're going to get when you wake up, in the words of Forrest Gump or something like that.
Life is like a box in the earth. You never know where you're going to wake up in it.
Bones in the catacombs.
Bones in the catacombs.
Life's like a book and a movie. You never know which Moundshroud
you're gonna get.
is coming around the next corner.
Movie Moundshroud delights in the bargain because of what he gains. Book Moundshroud delights in the bargain because of what it accomplishes. The saving of Pip's life, the salvaging of their collective childhood, and the preservation of Halloween's magic, mischief, and mystique. People always want to work Christmas miracles into fiction. We need more Halloween miracles like this one.
We say it all the time. It's a Halloween miracle.
Sure is.
We're just going to roll with that. We're going to coin that.
Getting this month done, getting the series done.
It's all a Halloween miracle.
It's a Halloween miracle. How the hell do we do it?
Don't even know.
How the ween do we do this? My remaining question here is, does their sacrifice buy him enough time to be saved by the doctors? Or does it only buy him a few years? The collective number of years, 4 in the movie, 8 in the book.
I wondered the same thing.
Is this temporary? It would get them all through childhood, at the very least, which would be the goal of Moundshroud.
Wow.
Salvage their childhood, get him to an adulthood, then it's fair game.
That's darker.
I don't know. I like to think that it bought him the time the doctors needed.
Yeah.
Maybe it bought him 4 hours, 8 hours.
That's how I interpreted it, but I did have the thought of like, how long, like, this is a Band-Aid.
Right.
You know, for something. Like, his number's up, you know, like you have that vibe of like, it's time to pay the piper for Pip.
Pip's piper, yes. This is the big question mark looming over the conclusion. Like Brave Little Toaster. Eventually, their humans will die. And it's kind of like,
now what?
In this world, in this reality, does he just survive childhood? Is that the end goal? How long does he live?
That's in fiction often. Like, you get this idea, like, when it's your time, and you can delay it, and you can try to circumvent it. You can go all the way around it. And it's just like, no, sometimes your number got pulled,
Next in line?
I don't like it. I hate that hopelessness. I really hate that hopelessness. I hate that there's nothing to be done. And that bothers us. That bothers any living.
It bothers everyone.
Again, that unlived life, like whatever's left.
Yeah, I almost agreed and said, I hate this whole concept. I hate this whole thing. But, there's still that part of me that loves the darkness behind it. Like, loves how just kind of fucked up it is.
It is.
I mean,
if nothing else, it does force you to think. It really makes you consider.
This is a moral dilemma.
Impact your options. Exactly. It's a moral dilemma.
On multiple levels, too.
Which way will the train go?
There's Mount Shroud. There's the kids. Like, they can't make decisions for themselves. They're children. Like, there's a lot to this. Mm-hmm. And that's why I emphasize the whole thing. Like, Mount Shroud isn't like a man. He's an immortal being. Mm-hmm. He's a fixture entity of life and death, the in-between, the undiscovered country. He is part of Halloween lore and history. Maybe he's death. Maybe he's the devil. We don't know what he is necessarily, but he isn't a predator in the sense that we know of predators. He's not a human predator.
He's not self-seeking.
Right. There's just something else to this that we cannot comprehend, we do not understand, because it's part of time and the past and like the future.
And that's way easier to accept.
It's sort of that unknown, like if we can accept any other mythology, any other belief system, God, the devil, like whatever, if we can believe in those things as realities, then we can look at something like Mount Shroud and go, we can't explain it, but there it is. It's real or whatever.
Like I say, it's easier to accept. It's easier for me at this point in my life and my journey to accept that.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, it's way easier to pin it on a villain, to blame someone or something.
Right.
This bad thing must happen because there are checks and balances and there's fairness and whatever. I think that's way easier for a lot of people, which leads to a lot of dogma.
This is ambiguous.
Right.
This is gray area.
To me, I would rather be enveloped in that unknown.
Swaddle me in the unknown.
Yeah.
Wrap me up, baby.
This is the collective something. And it's not right or wrong or good or bad or just or unjust. It just is.
Right.
And for me, that's a lot easier to process, where I'm like, it's the same to everyone. It comes for everyone. And yes, there are things about this life that are unfair. There are things about these circumstances that are unfair, you might say. But like,
yeah, totally.
It's not the work of some evil, malevolent thing. It is what it is.
Well, one of the last things that Mount Shroud says to them, I have the book right here in my hands. Mount Shroud says, night and day, summer and winter, boys, seed time and harvest, life and death. That's what Halloween is, all rolled up in one. Noon and midnight, being born, boys, rolling over, playing dead like dogs, lads, and getting up again, barking, racing through thousands of years of death each day and each night. Halloween, boys, every night, every single night, dark and fearful until at last you made it and hid in cities and towns and had some rest and could get your breath, and you began to live longer and have more time and space out the deaths and put away fear, and at last have only special days in each year when you thought of night and dawn and spring and autumn and being born and being dead.
Unless you're me.
Yeah. Well, then there are those of us, yes, where who start podcasts about this exact topic, and sort of live our lives with death and life and everything in between being the swirly twirly, gumdrop machine that we just can't stop consuming. We can't stop eating of its sweet, sweet candies. Boy, is that not Halloween. It's all just it's so gut-wrenching. Makes me feel sick.
Makes me feel sick as well. Too much candy. And it doesn't help that in this scene, all the kids are crying. Like, we hear them kind of choking back sobs. And the kids are all upset. We've talked about this before too. Anytime this happens in a scene in children's fiction, it really elevates and amps up that, like, the stakes and the weight of it.
Yeah. I mean, when the fun-loving, adventure-seeking, Halloween-obsessed group of children start having a bad time and they start crying
Yeah.
and not really like, they're no longer making fun of it. This is a real thing.
This is when you need to take the mask off and you need to get down at their level and you need to say, it's going to be okay.
Yes.
But
Right.
they're facing something that, even much older people would cry in the face of.
Yeah.
This is when the haunted house needs to have the lights turned on.
I said it before, and I will bookend it now. These kids have grown up quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
In this scene, they are actively growing up before our very eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I think it also at least bothered Stephen King. I think it inspired him to write the most infamous scene in It, when the kids are still down in the dark sewers beneath the city, thinking they've beaten Pennywise. But just in case they didn't, and just in case they need to come back as adults 27 years from now and finish the job, they all make a pact to do something that will keep them from ever forgetting. And this is an if you know kind of situation. But that's how profound of an effect this has had on not just people like us, other writers, other very famous people like Stephen King.
Just one more ingredient in that candy salad of trauma, like a TikTok.
Candy salad on TikTok?
People confessing their worst traumas, they bring candy and dump it in a bowl.
No, I haven't seen that.
And then at the end, you have a big old candy salad, and everybody knows everybody's worst moments in life.
I'm getting a good idea for a Halloween party. Well, anyways. The kids strike their bargain with Moundshroud, eat their piece of Pip's sugar skull, and Pip's soul is set free to fly out of the catacombs.
Pip, wait! Come back! Where's he going?
After all this, only one place. Home!
But we saved him, didn't we? Will he live, Mr. Moundshroud?
Come, our night journey is over.
Moundshroud sweeps them all up in another whirlwind and returns to his mansion. In the movie, he sends them off with one final monologue from his balcony.
I thank you for a most amusing and profitable evening. And after what you've done for your friend, one I will never forget.
But what about...
Run! See for yourselves! The last grand trick-or-treat!
They return to town to find that Pip's appendectomy was successful.
Yay.
They've saved Pip and secured their own childhood happiness by ensuring that Pip would be around to go trick-or-treating for the foreseeable future. And he thanks them from his bedroom window, letting them know that it really was his wraith the whole time, and kind of a, and I was there again, and I was still there, and I saw all these things with you, but okay, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. If you don't remember it, that's on you.
Yep.
Pretty funny. And being all wrapped up, nice in a bow, the whole thing quickly comes to an end.
Then a great wondrous happy tiredness gathered in their eyelids and arms and feet, and the witch and mummy and monster and skeleton ran back to their own houses to remember this special night that they would never in all their lives ever forget.
In the book, the conclusion takes a bit more time. Returning back to the present, the kids learn that the mansion in the woods is a physical manifestation of the history of Halloween. There are 8 floors, or 7 including the basement, each representing one of the time periods and themes that they visited based on their costumes, driving home the history lesson that Halloween is a massive structure made up of a multitude of layers, one bleeding into another. And the boys run home from there to Pip's house, where Tom alone goes inside to visit while the others wait out in the cold. He finally returns to let them know what's happened. Pip had his appendix out, and he's still in the hospital, but the doctor said he's doing just fine. And the boys, they all start crying tears of joy. They're just standing in this circle in this yard crying. But they notice that Pip's house isn't decorated. So they all go and find a jack-o'-lantern to bring back and leave on his porch for his return home. It doesn't say where they get them from, but I like to think that they ran home to get their own jack-o'-lanterns and bring them.
Makes sense.
And when they all wander off to their own homes for the night, Ray Bradbury writes, "The lawn was empty, but Pipkin's porch was just full of candle illumination and warmth and baked pumpkin smell. And both versions end with the Halloween tree itself, with Moundshroud blowing out the flame and the jack-o'-lantern that looks just like him. In the movie, it's sunrise, and when Moundshroud blows out his flame, all of the pumpkins are whisked away into the sky, all except Pip's. In the book, it's midnight. We learn that each of the boys had his own pumpkin in that tree, including Moundshroud himself.
Mm-hmm.
And as each kid returns home, the flames in their respective jack-o'-lanterns go out, ending with Moundshroud, who himself turns to smoke and dissipates back down into the house, where he will surely slumber in wait of next year's All Hallows Eve. But there's one final moment before Tom goes inside his own house. He has this somewhat telepathic conversation with Moundshroud from across town, something that Ray Bradbury kind of also does in Something Wicked This Way Comes. He asks, "Oh, Mr. Moundshroud, will we ever stop being afraid of nights and death?" To which Moundshroud replies, "When you reach the stars, boy, yes, and live there forever. All the fears will go, and death himself will die."
I love that.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's nice.
My original script said, "Take that how you will, Darklings, and happy Halloween." But I know we can't leave it there. I wasn't sure what to make of this, but seeing as how the jack-o'-lanterns all go out, followed by Moundshrouds, this suggests that he actually is the physical manifestation of death.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of what I was saying in part one. Like, that's how it feels often.
It does. And I think that is him in the movie for sure. But here, I still think he's more of a cog in the machine of death, a representative of death, an ambassador who can autonomously navigate the undiscovered country and can present himself to any desperate, deserving soul or souls on All Hallows Eve to work out some sort of deal and perform another Halloween miracle. This year, it's this group of kids, and next year, who knows? But that's just my take. But if this means he really is the spirit of Halloween past, then where's my Halloween present? And my Halloween future?
Yeah, I want to see Halloween future.
I want a trilogy. We need to also, we're going to raise Bobby Pickett from the dead, and we're going to raise Ray Bradbury from the dead.
So seance time.
Yes. We're going to hold the hands of our friends in this seance, although some of them are dead.
David Krishner might help us. Sounds like something he'd want to produce.
Yeah, for sure. But in all seriousness, we don't need a trilogy, because the history of Halloween is vast and eternal. And although it forever changes, it's still always the same. For as Moundshroud says toward the end, it all adds up.
4,000 years ago, 100 years, or this year, one place or another, the celebrations are all the same.
El Dia de los Muertos.
Day of the Dead.
Feast of Ghosts. All Hallows Eve.
Halloween!
And if that isn't a message that says we are never really alone, I don't know what is. Because these kids felt like they were truly alone in their struggle and their grief. But turns out, there's a whole human history of facing grief eyeball to eyeball, of looking at it and accepting it for what it is. Some people revere it, some choose to laugh at it. Many store up their hopes in the afterlife as well. But we, none of us, should fear it. Because if we're never really alone in life, then how much more are we never really alone in death?
Yeah.
We all live different lives and do different things. Yet, as the Radical Face lyric says, but in the end, we all go the same.
And I really like that picture of death, and I want to keep that in my head instead of the step down and step down and step down below the graveyard where nothing is, far from the fireflies.
I'd much rather be up in the Mexican graveyards than in the Mexican catacombs, for sure.
Let's dance up there.
Let's definitely dance on those graves, absolutely.
Please.
And guys, we just got all this from a children's cartoon produced by Hanna-Barbera, premiered on ABC, and aired on Cartoon Network during October for many years throughout our collective childhood. And all I can really say is thank you, Ray Bradbury, for presenting Pip and Moundshroud and these cultural lessons to us so that we too can come away from this night all together changed. I don't know about you guys, but facing this book, this movie, this story, both last year and this year, and with many different circumstances, both named and unnamed on the show so far, it has forced me to grow up quite a bit in many different ways alongside this group of kids. I can personally say that I was so profoundly affected that last year I lit a bonfire in my backyard, and I sent you a picture of it, and I was texting you about it, Kaylin. I faced the North Star, the wishing star, and I prayed to the Halloween gods to save the life of my friend. I was drunk, and I offered up a year of my life to save yours.
Did you?
Yes.
You actually did.
I did.
Wow.
That night that I was telling you I was actually praying for the first time in a long time to fix everything.
I suppose it remains to be seen if death will take that year from you or
We'll
if
see.
it will give it back on good faith.
It's from the far candle-burning end of my life. So, I guess we'll never really know.
We never will, but thank you all the same.
Here we are.
It feels fitting, even if the Reaper never comes to collect.
Yeah.
Which
sure.
I hope he doesn't. Not like that. Because you know me, then I'd have to be all apologetic to your ghost about how you gave up a whole year you could have had, and woe is me, that can't be my fault.
Well, just look for me on Halloween and Christmas. That's where I'll be.
It means so much to me that you would bargain a year off of the end of your life, that any Darkling would put us into their ears at all, much less all of the Darklings that do so.
Yeah.
Not just for October, but all year round. It's really,
You
really
feel
great,
the love.
and I don't have the words. It really bothers a writer not to have the words, but I don't have the words to express how much I love doing this and being here with all of you, and how much I wish that I could say I was on the other side of all that craziness from last year. I really wish that I could say that. I can't quite yet, but I can say I'm still here, and I think that counts for something.
I bought you enough time.
Just enough time.
Bought you enough time. The rest is unknown.
The rest is unknown.
How much time?
To be determined.
Check back in next year for yours. Man, well, it's been a hell of a spooky season.
Yes, it has.
We toured Wonka's factory, ate his candy, and survived. We toured Boris's castle, did the mash, and the twist, but don't tell Boris,
So much mashing.
and survived. And now we've toured the undiscovered country, learned even more about the history of Halloween, and survived. This is what Halloween is all about, and I'm glad that I get to share it with you all. So thanks for being here, Darklings.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Christian, for guiding us through the undiscovered country and beyond. And into
It was my pleasure.
the far candle burning, what is it? The far end.
I don't know, I didn't
candle
write it down.
burning end of your life.
Yeah. I'm going to regret that when the day comes. though, so.
Oh, I know. You already regret it. You regret it even now. It only took a year.
What have I done? Oh, God. We'll call this is kind of our podcast New Year's. It's our anniversary.
Yeah,
so,
it is.
Our anniversary month anyway.
Here we go, year 4.
Woohoo.
You guys ready?
Yeah.
Year 4.
I am.
It's our senior year.
I'm ready for the treats. I'm rewatching Harry Potter. This is the year that really darkens things up. It turns the tides on everything. And so nothing we've known will ever be the same. Everything we've ever known will never be the same from this day forward.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for getting pretty dark with us for 3 years and for helping us grow into your one-stop shop for all your frightfully nostalgic needs. I wish you all a happy Halloween,
Happy Halloween.
a spectacular Samhain, a dope Dia de Muertos, an awesome All-Hallowtide.
I second all of that.
That's my
with
piece.
A resounding hear, hear, and a clink of my water bottle.
Yes,
With your
cheers
whiskey
to the
glass.
plastic, the crunch
Yeah.
of your
Yucky.
plastic water bottle. But
Wow.
we did it!
Wow.
We did
it.
Oh my God!
You
it's
did it.
done.
We're here.
All right.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll see
Yeah.
you all again as soon as we can.
We'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming very soon.
Yes, indeed.
Our bi-weekly content.
We hope your Halloween is wonderful. You guys sent us some amazing costume ideas that you have. We hope you will send photos.
A yaha.
Can't wait to see all of your celebrations and to celebrate with you.
Dress up, eat your candy, watch your movies. We're doing the same.
Watch your kids. Do you know where your children are? They might
watch
be.
Your movies, watch your kids.
Headed
They might be
to Egypt.
in the catacombs.
Or Mexico.
In the graveyard, beneath the graveyard. That's where your kids might be.
Yikes.
All right, well, we'll see you guys in no time.
Happy Halloween.
Do you think they wake up and like remember everything tomorrow?
Definitely.
Yeah?
This sticks with you. For sure.
Do they talk about it?
Probably not for a while until Jenny or someone has this like moment of she grabs a broom to sweep and she looks over at Ralph. Then he looks at her.
She sees him seeing and she goes, you too? You remember? You know? They all think it's a dream, right? They have to.
We're going to be talking more about dreams before long because we can't quit them.
We just can't shake
Here on That's Pretty Dark.
the dreams and the nightmares. All right, bye. Happy Halloween.
Bye.
Boo! Boo! Boo!
Thanks for listening to That's Pretty Dark, written and produced by Christian Baxter Mott and Kaylin Andrews.
Our music is composed by Jonathan Simmons, and our art is provided by Paige Garland at Power Girl Illustration.
Join the collective nostalgia and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at That's Pretty Dark Podcast.
Share your experiences and let us know what shows, films, or villains still haunt you from childhood at that'sprettydarkpodcast@gmail.com. Remember, you're never really alone.
So until next time, sweet dreams, everyone.
Sweet skulls, crystal sugar candy skulls.